Officer, date Lyday, memorial, pipes and drums. Gotten in the fray, throwing trees. By the right, dirge, march.
Please be seated. Good morning, and welcome to the funeral service for Ogden Police Officer Nate Lyday, 2 Foxtrot 1069. I'm Randy Watt, Chief of the Ogden Police Department, and I have been asked by the family to officiate this event. The Health Department has asked that you wear masks as much as possible. They also ask that you note the number and/or color of the chair you're seated in for future reference. I'd also like to note the presence directly in front of this podium and above the casket of the National Honor Flag. That trifolded flag travels throughout the United States and participates in the services of fallen police officers, firefighters, military members, as they are laid to their final rest. I'd also like to express our deep gratitude to the many organizations and volunteers that have made this possible, that have given hundreds and thousands of hours throughout this last week in our support, for all who have brought comfort to us as this police department and as the family has grieved. I'd like to highlight the presence of the Lyday family seated here in front today. I'd also like to recognize some distinguished guests joining us for this solemn ceremony. Present with us today is the Governor of the state of Utah, the Honorable Gary R. Herbert, and his lovely wife. Spencer J. Cox, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Utah, and his wife. Attorney General for the state of Utah, Sean Reyes. The Utah Commissioner of Public Safety, Jess Anderson. The United States Attorney for the District of Utah, the Honorable John Huber. Congressman John Curtis of Utah's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Ben McAdams of Utah's 4th Congressional District. The Honorable Michael P. Caldwell, Mayor of the City of Ogden. Mark Johnson, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Ogden. Utah State Senator Alan Christensen. Utah State Senator Ann Milner. Weber County Attorney Chris Allred, and Deputy Weber County Attorneys Brandon Miles and Dee Smith. Weber County Commissioner James Harvey. Ms. Jenny Ashworth Taylor, and I would draw your attention to the flag draped so beautifully to my rear from the top of the stadium. That is the flag that hangs in North Ogden and is carried by the organization Follow the Flag in honor of Major Brent Taylor, Utah Army National Guard. killed in action in Afghanistan. Mayor Sharon Bolos, West Haven City. Mayor Robert Dandoy, Roy City. Mayor Leonard Call, North Ogden City. Mayor Russell Porter, South Ogden City. Mayor Michelle Tate, Harrisville City. Mayor of Marriott Slaterville and iconic Ogden figure, Scott Van Leeuwen. Members of the Ogden City Council, Chair Angela Choberka, Vice Chair Ben Nadolski, Bart Blair, Doug Stevens, Marcia White, Rich Heyer, and Luis Lopez. Dr. Brad Mortensen, President of Weber State University. Dr. Richard Nye, Superintendent of the Ogden City School District. Gary Williams, the Ogden City Attorney. Jay Lauder, Ogden City Director of Public Works. Staff members of the Office of Senator Mitt Romney. Sarah Tolliver, President and CEO of Visit Ogden. Kimberly Boucher, Executive Director of Downtown Ogden Alliance. Cindy Wheelock, Executive Assistant to the Mayor of Ogden. Ms. Alicia Skinner and Ms. Cheryl Mack of the Weber Dispatch Center, and who played a significant role in the event resulting in this funeral service. Numerous local, state, local, and federal law enforcement executives and staff members, numerous fire and emergency medical executives and staff members. If I have missed anyone, you have my sincerest apology. We appreciate all of you being with us today as we memorialize the life and service of Officer Nate Lyday. Your presence here speaks volumes about the respect you and we hold for our police officers and all first responders. In Scripture, King Benjamin states, "And behold, I tell ye these things that ye may learn wisdom, that ye may learn that when ye are in the service of your fellow beings, ye are only in the service of your God." Officer Nate Lyday made the ultimate sacrifice and lost his life serving a family, a community, our state, and our God. May we always remember the service and sacrifice of this fine young man. We will now hear from today's speakers. Nancy Lyday, Officer Lyday's mother, will be our first speaker. Nancy will be followed by Andrew Lyday, Nate's father, who will be followed by Nate's brother, Cody Lyday. Following Cody's remarks, Officer Dylan Eshelman, friend of Nate and Ashley, will speak to us, and he will be followed by Todd Shobe, lifelong friend of the Lyday family. Our final speaker will be Governor Herbert. Nancy.
I hope I can get through this. I had to have notes, so my apologies, but I didn't want to leave anything out. Nathan James Lyday. Words just don't seem sufficient to describe Nathan. Some come to mind are caring, loving, amazing, strong. Along with that comes valor, honor, and integrity. Nathan stood for what was right. In 5th grade, Nathan wrote a poem, and if I were in charge of the world, and the first line was he'd get rid of broccoli. And then he said he would get rid of bullies. He hated bullies. He would increase recess quite a bit. And even if he didn't take his vitamins, he could still be in charge of the world. Nathan couldn't stand contention. He would be able to come into any situation and pretty much calm him down. He's gentle nature. My gentle giant was and always is the ultimate defender in life, in sports, in anything he did. He led the way. He got the opportunity to meet Carlos Boozer. He was so proud of that. He took it as a challenge when Carlos was dribbling the basketball, and he said, "Say, Nate, why don't you see if you can steal it from me?" So he's dribbling, and Nathan, he eyeballed that ball. He stole it from Boozer, dribbled around behind him, and made a layup. Then he proceeded to get 6 free throws, nothing but the net, and Carlos Boozer turned around, and there was Coach Corbin sitting there, and he said, "We got to sign this kid for a 10-day. That made Nate's day. He could not wait, but he's always just led the way in anything he does. He doesn't do anything small. It's all the way or not at all. On occasion, he'd get into trouble. And when I was always talking to him about it, he'd say, I don't remember that. So he had a mischievous side. One time he was having a little bit of a dispute with his brother. He had this battle brewing, and Nathan went and called 911. And trouble was, his father is a police officer, the dispatcher was a neighbor, and they called and said, why do we have Nathan on 911? Then he hung up on the 911 operator and called his mother, because, he's in trouble, you gotta talk to mom. And I chastised him a little bit, saying, Nathan, you know better than that. Did you really call 911? His reply, well, if I did, it would have been an accident. So all I heard in the background was everyone going, Nathan! And if he did, it would have been an accident. His sense of humor started from day one. He was about 2.5, and his grandfather was visiting from Pennsylvania. And of course, any good little 2-year-old, if you hold up 2 fingers, how many fingers am I holding up? He'd look at you and tell you 3. And then they'd ask him what the color of the sky is. His answer is green. Anything he could do to get you into a little bit of a debate was going to happen. The entire time his granddad visited, the answers were 2, or 3 instead of 2, and green instead of blue. We took his grandfather back to the airport, and as his granddad was walking down the concourse, Nathan yelled, Granddad, okay, it's 2 and it's blue. 2 years old, he's got a good sense of humor. I used to always say, Nate, you're gonna give me heart failure. Will you stop? And he'd say, well, that's my job, Mom. That's my job. His smile, his demeanor, his silly sense of humor was always infectious. All he had to do was walk into a room. There seemed to be a special nature and spirit that followed him. He had many nicknames. One was earned when he drove his bike off the edge of a dirt road and he missed the turn and he ended up in a cow pie infested pond. He came up looking like the X-Wing fighter in Star Wars, but his favorite nickname of all was Uncle Nate. At his graduation from Weber State College, his little niece wanted to get closer, so we went down to the opposite side of where the family was sitting so we could get some pictures. She mustered up her voice and yelled top of her lungs, "Way to go, Uncle Nate." The entire D Event Center heard her at 3, and you couldn't wipe the smile off his face. Another instance, his little nephew came down to spend some time with him. He was so excited that Nathan had become a police officer, so he traveled down so he could see Nathan's police car and he could experience it. And I don't think that special day will ever be forgotten. No greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. And I would say his community, his family. I would ask everyone to consider, in a world full of hate, be the light. Nathan is honored by all of this outpouring of love and support. I hope can each spread love and light, tolerance and kindness. Together we can drive out evil, all forms. Honor Nate, honor all of us, officers, firemen, your fellow man. In a world full of hate, be the light like Nathan did. I love you, son.
Hi there. My name's Andrew Lyday, and I'm the proud father of Officer Nate Lyday. I'd like to thank you all for coming out today to honor and show your love and respect for Nate and celebrate the time that we had with him. As she spoke, Nate loved his family. I still have thought of so many stories over the past week and a half, and so many came to mind. I wanted to at least share one or two with you. One time we were going to the airport and got the car parked, got checked in at the gate. This was pre-9/11, so you could walk out to the gate and everybody just go out there. And we went through the ticket counter, went up the stairs, down the concourse, and started going through security. The security agent, TSA agent, looked at his suitcase when he rolled it through. He had his little roll-around suitcase, and he was probably 6 or 7 maybe years old, maybe. She looked at the suitcase on the x-ray machine. She ran it through, backed it up, looked at it again. And she looked at us with a puzzled look on her face and said, "There's nothing in that suitcase except a small toy in the corner, apparently." I said, "Yeah, I know. He's not actually going anywhere. I am. He's staying home, but he wanted to bring a suitcase to be a big guy like Dad." So many people have crossed my paths in the days since that horrible afternoon of May 28th. The list of all of them would be so extensive, I'd be here for the rest of the afternoon. But I do want to recognize a few of them at this time. And as Chief Watts said, I apologize because there's many, many, many I will leave out. But I'd like to start with Governor Gary Herbert and Attorney General Reyes. I've received calls and spoken in both person with both of them in the last few days. And their words of encouragement have helped me to work my way through this, at least to this point. I'd like to recognize the Ogden Police Department's administration, Chief Randy Watt, who 29 years ago was an instructor of mine at the police academy. I always felt comfort when Nate was on duty, knowing this department was being led by a man that had the skills and the ability and the knowledge that he would train, equip, and set an example of duty, honor, integrity, and to never give up the fight. Others, including Captain Tim Scott, who I've known for many years, from Ogden a little bit, and when he was at Clearfield Police before. Captain Jake Suby, Lieutenant Mike Boone, who I knew from Clearfield Police. We had a heartwarming talk on the way to the medical examiner's office to pick up my son and bring him back home to Ogden. Mike told me that they realized 8 years ago with the passing of Jared Frankham that if there was 90,000 people in the city of Ogden, 100 of them may not like us, but the other 89,900 do. And they will support us, and you will see it over the next few days. Also, a very special, heartfelt thanks to Chief Deputy Eric Young. I had a brief contact or two over the past couple of years with Chief Young at graduations, swearing-in ceremonies. Probably bumped into him at a training event or two in the past. But he was basically the first department contact I had at the emergency room. I remember his face standing in the corner and could see the anguish on his face and the tone in his voice. And I could tell immediately how much he cared for Nate as an individual and not just an officer. I've been amazed, Eric, by your compassion, your professionalism, and your desire to support our family and ensure that Nate gets the full honors that he deserves for the sacrifice he made. You are a comfort to us and a friend, and that will not be forgotten. I'd also like to thank the Ogden Police Department as a whole for your words and demonstrations of your love for Nate. I knew it for myself, but it still fills me with pride to hear of how he grew into the amazing young man and officer that he was. There again, I'm leaving out many, but Jenna, Ashton, and many others, you've been there every minute. We've needed you. And we know you will be in the future if we need you then too. I'd like to thank the Ogden Fire Department, Parks and Public Works Department, people behind the scenes that helped make all this possible. They weren't shown on parades, they weren't processions, they won't be shown on TV, but their work is greatly appreciated. The officers from adult probation and parole, and all the other public safety agencies that have honored my son and his profession. If you were to look back at Nate's life and use Facebook as a timeline, you would probably come to a conclusion that he loves many things, but I think 3 of them really stood out. First is his family. Nate loved his family. He loved to be with them, support them, camp with them, and celebrate with them. The focal point of that, however, is his wife, Ashley. Ashley, you truly are the love of his life and will always be a part of ours and a connection to him. And we love you dearly. The second thing that came to mind was soccer. Anybody that knew Nate very long loved his joy of soccer. Whether it was watching it, playing it, or even diving after a t-shirt at the risk of knee surgery, when it was a true passion for him. Now there's even a jersey to show he truly is the #1 RSL fan. Third would be Ogden Police Department, the community he loved. If you look back, 2012 or 13 or so, he has a picture of a thin blue line flag posted on his Facebook. He stood so tall and proud the day he was sworn into the police department. He was eager to learn and improve so he could be the best officer possible. May 28th was exactly 1 year to the day from his swearing in. But the feedback and stories from citizens and coworkers alike assure me he was performing admirably. An officer can do many things on his own, but there are often times that he needs backup. May 28th was such a day for Nate. Squad 1 was very special to Nate. He admired Jason as a leader and mentor, and knew that Dylan and the others had his back. When the shooting started, his partner immediately started to return fire, and along with the 2 APMP agents on scene, moved through active shooting to try and stop the threat and rescue my son. That, my friends, demonstrates the difference between an officer and a hero, and I am proud to know them. We've been so humbled and amazed by the show of love and support from the community. We can't even begin to acknowledge it all. From the blue lights, to flowers, to flags, signs, it has assured me that although there may be a great deal of anger and protests against law enforcement, this community does in fact support Nate and the brave men and women that risk their lives to serve and protect them. I hesitate to single out one time from the past days, but I was so moved by one, I want to share it. It was Thursday evening, and we were following the van carrying Nate to the medical examiner's office. We passed a woman and a young girl standing on Highway 89 in East Layton. They were standing behind a minivan with their hands over their hearts. They didn't know Nate, as his name had not been released at that point. Just that an officer had lost their life trying to save a family in distress. People are the key to all these stories, and what reminds me that good will prevail. Heroic people, caring people, respectful people, generous people, and those courageous enough to run through a barrage of emotions and pain, to be there and remind Ashley and the rest of us that we can get through this, and that a hug of words and support will be a start. Shantae and Liz, you were willing to drop everything and be there at a moment's notice, and we will always be grateful. If there's any thread of a silver lining to Nate's sacrifice, I think it may be in an article that just came out in Forbes magazine. It was titled, "Spare a Thought for the Good Cops." Nate was definitely a good cop and set a standard for others to follow. He was always striving to do the best that he could. He was an excellent learner, was always trying to improve himself and his skills. Numerous officers and citizens have told me how his big smile and easygoing personality could help to de-escalate a situation. Nate was also very self-conscious of details and report writing. He did, however, not get a chance to clear from his last call. A father's job is to guide and assist along the way, so I'd like to assist him with that at this point. My last assigned call sign, from Davis County Sheriff's Office. Weber, Delta 312. 1014, 1F2 will be 1024, 108. He'll now be 107 on a special detail, standing proud with Joseph, David, Dennis, Eric, Cody, Douglas, Corey, Derek, Aaron, and Jared, and their special companion, K9 Hondo, and all the other brave souls who have gone before them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cody Lyday, and Nate Lyday was my little brother. I'd like to start out by thanking the Ogden Police Department and the entire city as a whole. The amount of love and support that has been shown to my family really is beyond words. Nate loves this city, and it was his home. Many of you know my brother in some way or another, whether it be as a police officer, a coworker, a classmate, or as a friend. I'd like to share with you today who my little brother was to me. When I was 16 years old, Nate was 12. We borrowed our dad's truck to go pick our sister up from a friend's house. When we pulled into the driveway, I had him switch me seats so we could pretend he drove us there. When I asked him to back out, he asked me which one is the reverse pedal. We promptly switched back seats. Nate was never the kind of kid to be ashamed of being a goofball. He loved to have fun and would do or say things that most people were too scared to. We usually use these moments as kids to razz him a little. We had so many stories about Nate growing up, and to this day, my family still loves to sit around and tell them. We did not know it then, but Nate truly was the tie that binds for our family. And he is the tie that binds our community together now. As I look around this great city, I see little bits of my brother everywhere. The schools that he went to, the parks that he played in, the restaurants he loved. Anyone who met Nate quickly realized he had nothing but love for everyone and everything around him. He really was the only person I had ever met that never had anything bad to say about anyone. He would meet people and instantly like them. And Nate embodies what I truly love about our city, Ogden. We have a community here that is about love and inclusion, and Nate was a part of that. If there was ever a time that we should come together as a community, this is it. I just wish that my brother could be here to see more of it. A dear friend recently reminded me that every day is a gift. And I would just like to ask everyone that's here today and throughout the country to take a minute and hug and love the people that are around you, your family, your coworkers, your friends. And I think that we can all make it through this together. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Officer Dylan Ashelman. I had the privilege of working with Nate from day one off of FTO. He came to Squad 1 as his first squad. And I remember on day one, he was the only guy to beat me in a briefing that morning. And I thought, who is this guy that beat me? And even then, as a brand new officer, you could see his joy and excitement to wear this uniform and wear his badge. Over the course of the year, me and Nate worked side by side on countless of calls. We spent countless time together telling stories, talking about our personal life, our work life, dreams, where we wanted to go. One thing that stands out is he always spoke very highly of his wife, Ashley. He loved her. And he never said a bad thing about her, except maybe that her cooking was way too good and he couldn't get enough of it. And I would have to agree, it is delicious. We talked about how we wanted to do canine together and work with dogs. That was his passion, that was his dream. When we did shift change, Nate went to Squad 2, and he'd always just message me, telling me how he wanted to come back to Squad 1 because he missed us. Well, finally, he was able to come back, and I got to spend countless days just doing what we love to do every day, and that was working for the city and protecting citizens and answering calls. And then coronavirus hit, but we always managed to come by and sit next to each other throughout the day, go on calls together, tell story after story. And there was times where we just sat there typing reports and we were just silent. But the fact was we were next to each other. Over this time, me and Nate went from friends to best friends to family. And him and Ashley will always be family to me. Even after work, we'd had a coworker that would ask us to go to the gym. And we'd always tell her we can't, because once we were home, we were home. When in all actuality, we were just getting on Xbox so we could play together. We just didn't want to stop. Throughout this year, me and Lyday answered call after call. And there was times where dispatch would send someone else to back myself or back Nate. And the backing officer would usually wait a few seconds because they knew that they were going to get canceled by one of us. We did everything together. At the end of the day, on that Thursday, Nate saved countless lives, to include my own, and I will forever be thankful for that. On that day, this world lost a hero and a man who loved Ogden City and all the citizens in it. But I know every single one of us here that puts on this uniform, puts on this badge, that gets up, follows our duties that we swore to do. He is there. Every single one of us has gained a guardian angel in this. And I just hope everybody remembers that he is always there. And actually, I want you to know he will never be forgotten. Thank you.
What a wonderful tribute this is today to celebrate the life of Nathan Lyday and the sacrifice he gave for this community. I know that Nathan would be incredibly grateful for the outpouring of gratitude and support for his family. Those of us that knew Nathan well would tell you that you would be hard-pressed to find someone that did not like him. And for that matter, with all the time that I spent with him as a youth, I can't recall a time that he ever said that he didn't like someone he ran into. He was moderately quiet as a kid, very smart, and as you've heard, a crazy soccer junkie. He seemed to always be in competition to break a bone or blow out a knee with my son Nick. He enjoyed launching his friends off the trampoline until one day he launched my son Logan, and Logan broke his arm. I don't think I ever remembered either one of them getting on a trampoline after that. Sometimes, as all boys do, he said things that would just make you laugh. So I noticed as coming in here today that there were some officers from some other states. So I want to preface this and just give you one piece of information here. We have gas stations in this state called Common Sense, and you'll get this in a minute. So one of those times, Nathan made us laugh a lot. We were at dinner with him and his mother. His mother relayed a story that night of something he said to his 7th grade teacher. As we all are aware, Nathan wasn't paying attention in class, only half paying attention, as well as the rest of the students. The teacher asked if anyone in class knew what common sense was. After a few minutes of silence and no one answered, the teacher called on Nathan. Nathan got up and said, "Yes, Common Sense is a gas station on the corner of my dad's house." Those are the kinds of things that Nathan always did, as his brother relayed. He was always saying funny things. So now let me tell you a tender story about Nathan. I received permission to tell this story and to give the name of the young lady that was involved. Lizzie relayed this message to me a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to paraphrase some of it and quote some directly. She lived in the same neighborhood as Nathan, and she had been struggling with an addiction that had caused herself and many others some grief. As we're all aware, things seem to get around in neighborhoods. Nathan found out, like most of the rest of us, what was happening in her life at that time. Nathan was working at Fresh Market, and Lizzie happened to get into the line where he was checking. Once she noticed him, she left the line for another line because she didn't want to face Nathan. Nathan noticed her, asked for another person to take his place for a moment. Nathan was at this time only 19. He walked over to Lizzie, gave her a hug, and said, and I quote, "You are one of my greatest examples, and I hope you know that you are truly amazing. No mistake can ever change that fact." Lizzie then said, "I will never forget it. At a time when he had every right to turn his head and walk away, he ran towards me. That's exactly what Christ would have done." So let's move forward to about a week ago. Lizzie gave me another message that she thought would be appropriate. Lizzie, her husband, and her daughter watched from an overpass as the procession brought Nathan back from Salt Lake City. A day or two after that, she relayed this to me, and I quote, and she's talking about her 5-year-old daughter here. "Tonight, while we were laying in her bed, she said, 'Mama, the cop died. He is now in heaven with God. And I'm glad we got to see all of his friends drive by. He has a lot of friends.' She then said, 'I never want to forget what came next.' She said a prayer. 'Please bless us to be good friends like the cops are.'" Mother Teresa once said, "A sacrifice, to be real, must cost. It must hurt. It must empty ourselves. The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. And the fruit of service is peace." As Mother Teresa stated, Nathan loved Ogden and his job. He served the community of Ogden, and because of that service, he gave the ultimate sacrifice, and now is at peace. Nothing great was ever accomplished without making sacrifices. Let us remember Nathan's sacrifice and do all we can do to keep this community as he would have wanted. Great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, fellow Utahns, special guests, the Lyday family, I'm here with deep humility, feeling inadequate to address you on this tender occasion, but honored by the invitation by the Lyday family and Ashley to come and make a few remarks as we celebrate the life of Officer Nathan James Lyday. As I've heard the comments to this point, the word that comes to mind is one of love. Obviously, Nathan was a compassionate, warm, and friendly, gregarious individual with a little bit of impishness in his personality. But he loved being a police officer. He loved going to work and sharing the time with his colleagues, the men and women in uniform. He loved the city of Ogden. He's a hometown boy. He's a hometown hero. He loved his opportunity to serve. Most of all, he loved his family. His sweet wife, Ashley, the light of his life. They were married 5 years ago today. and a wonderful opportunity for them to be together as husband and wife. Given the love that Nathan has shown to all of us, as we look at the responsibility of those men and women in uniform to protect and to serve, I look at Nathan and his assignment as a police officer that he looked at akin to a noble calling. Indeed, there are few professions that have more challenge in life than being a law enforcement officer. The stress as you go out to work each and every day, facing dangers that you don't know, your family praying that you'll come home safe and sound as you go out to serve and protect. That's pretty challenging. That's pretty stressful. Police officers willing to put it on the line for someone else. It's been mentioned already. A dangerous situation they don't retreat from. And in Nathan's case, we saw an example of actually moving towards the danger in order to try and save somebody else from violence. Nathan's end of watch on May 28th came all too soon. He died heroically, sacrificing his life in an attempt to save others. In honoring Nathan's courage and sacrifice, which we do today, it would be wise for us not to overlook the sacrifice of his family, friends, particularly Ashley at this challenging time, his parents Andrew and Nancy, his fellow colleagues. All of us are in this together as we mourn the loss of our good friend Nathan. To Ashley and family members and friends of the Lyday family, I want you to know that people across the state and beyond share a broken heart with you at this time and want to offer you their most compassionate best wishes. Jesus taught that we should love one another. That's sometimes easy to say. Unfortunately, it seems sometimes hard to do. Nevertheless, it's a good guide and a commandment given to all of us. Jesus also said that greater love hath no man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. Nathan has done that. I think these times make us have questions. Many of us are asking ourselves, what can I do? What can I do to make it better, to help ease the pain, the suffering, the sadness, the darkness that we feel because of this tragedy, this tragic event? We have been through, in recent weeks and months, some very dark days. And we have dark days probably ahead of us in our lives and the challenges of our mortal existence. But I get heart and encouragement from the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Jesus taught that we should love our neighbors, love one another. I was reminded as I was preparing my remarks of a great speech given by Abraham Lincoln as he dedicated the Gettysburg Cemetery in Pennsylvania, and known as the Gettysburg Address. And as he taught the crowd there, about 15 to 20,000, about what was taking place as we honored these people who give the last full measure of devotion to our country, I thought of Nathan. I also thought of us. He said, in talking to those people, that it is for us, the living, to be dedicated to the unfinished work. I think that's a good charge to all of us today, that we have a responsibility and an opportunity to further the work of Officer Lyday. We should, in fact, bear one another's burdens that they be made light. We should, in fact, mourn with those who mourn. And we should, in fact, comfort those who stand in need of comfort. We all have the ability and the opportunity to do that. And certainly the Lyday family and their friends need that kind of assistance. So let that be our charge and our commitment as we leave these services today. One last thing. I think these are opportunities for times of reflection. We have introspection opportunities to ask ourselves questions. How do I measure up? Nathan is a good example of what we ought to be and how we ought to conduct our life. But questions come to mind about why. Why? The great question posed in the Old Testament by Job was, if a man die, shall he live again? He answered that question pretty soon after that when he said, all the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change occurs. I'd like to add my own testimony that not only will he live again, but that he does live. We go through different chapters in our existence. One door closes and another door opens. He's going to that next chapter with a new birth and a new beginning. I liken it to sitting on the shoreline and watching a ship go out to the horizon. As it goes to the horizon, it slowly slips from our view, and we say, there he goes. Unbeknownst to us, on the other side of the horizon, far away, is another shoreline where people are there gathered. And they say, here he comes. Family, friends, loved ones, with outreach to arms, wanting to show him the love that they feel for him and for his sacrifice and service. Let me just conclude by saying it's an honor to be here to pay tribute to one of Utah's finest, and to family and friends who have gathered here to show support. Ashley, you have a lot of friends, way beyond what we see here at Lindquist Field. Words cannot express our sadness and our hope for a better day. But I do have a prayer. My prayer today is that God, our Heavenly Father, will bless us as his children with understanding, with hope, with appreciation for all of God's children. I pray that God will bless Ashley and family, Andrew and Nancy and extended family and friends, that they'll have strength, that they'll have courage, that they'll have a ability to have their spirits buoyed up and look optimistically towards the future. I also pray that all of us will have a desire to serve as Nathan has served and give our lives in the service of others, all of God's children. In honoring Nathan's memory, we can demonstrate our love for our fellow man and to do good to each other as we have opportunity day by day. That is my prayer. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Governor, for your wise and wonderful words, and thank you to the members of the family for sharing with us and allowing us further glimpse into the life of Nate Lyday. The Ogden Police Department recognizes exceptional performance of officers and staff through the awarding of medals and ribbons. One of the medals is the Police Star Medal, the department's version of the military's Purple Heart, awarded for injury or loss of life in combat. The Police Star, ranking next to the Superior Service Medal in order of precedence, is awarded to a sworn officer of any rank for outstanding work involving great risk and including an act whereby an officer receives a wound or serious injury and which is received under honorable circumstances in the line of duty. Attention to orders. It is hereby ordered that Officer Nathan James Lyday, 2 Foxtrot 1069er, is posthumously awarded by Chief of Police Stephen R. Watt the Police Star for services rendered on the 28th of May in the year 2020 and effective on this date, the 6th day of June in the year 2020. Please present the award. In a few moments, I will ask Ogden police officers to form a cordon, and the pallbearers and honor detail will be piped to the hearse while honors are rendered. Upon the completion of honors and dismissal of the cordon, we ask that those of you not moving to the graveside service please remain seated and allow the family members and OPD officers and their parties to quickly make their way to the exits to form the procession. The graveside services will be streamed to the screens here in the stadium, as well as on KSL, Ogden City Facebook Live, and the Ogden Police Department's Facebook Live pages. Once the parties on the stage have left this stage, this funeral service is concluded. Thank you and God bless. Form the cordon.
Preset, form!
High band. The Jewish minstrel boy. By the right, George March.
And we are live right now looking at a very touching and memorial service here for Officer Nate Lyday. Just a beautiful service that just ended a short time ago at Lindquist Field, a beautiful setting in the outdoors there overlooking the Wasatch Front. And he is being remembered as a hometown hero, a man who loved his job, loved his family, and also loved dearly his wife. Today was her 5th year wedding anniversary on a day like this.
Some really heartbreaking moments that we've been watching for the past hour here during these funeral services for Officer Lyday. His widow, Ashley, as you just mentioned, their 5-year anniversary today. Heartbreaking for the family.
It really is. You know, it's an incredible thing that this family is going through right now in regards to the situation that they find themselves in. But there's a lot of interesting things that happen according to the family. The day he was shot, a little over a week and a half ago, shot and killed on the very day, 1 year exactly, that he was sworn in as an officer. There's his father going by and some family friends and others. His father also a police officer, and giving some very sobering words at the pulpit only a short time ago.
I think these funeral services is really an opportunity not only for family and friends to gather and to mourn, but for the rest of us as a community to learn about Officer Nate Lyday, who he was as a person, the good person that he was, and his intent to serve his hometown, his community. Let's pause here just for a moment. And as you're watching members of the family leaving Lindquist Field, I want to point us to what Governor Gary Herbert had to say earlier, talking about...
Dismissed.
The governor talking about how this really is a call to action for all of us. A time for reflection. How can we be better? How can we do better so that we can honor the lives of people like this who serve us and our community?
And that was so impressive about this whole funeral service here. Not only did we hear some wonderful and powerful words from the governor, but also I was very impressed to be able to hear from Lyday's family. Nate's mom spoke, Nate's father spoke, Nate's brother spoke, a fellow officer, a family friend, all of them talking about just the wonderful man that he was and what he accomplished. I mean, this man was just 24 years old when he lost his life. He'd only been an officer for a year or more. And here he was out serving the community. They call him the hometown hero is what they're calling him because he was born and raised in Ogden. He loved the restaurants there. He loved the parks, the schools. He went to Ogden High School. He was a graduate of Weber State University. So all of these things just culminating together that this was a man who made such an impact at such a young age. It was just so impressive to be able to hear all that.
And not to mention, of course, there were very emotional moments during this past hour, but also some lighter moments. One of my favorite moments that we saw earlier, what came from his mother, Nancy, who said that her son loved soccer, but hated broccoli and bullies. And I thought that was a really light moment. It's a window into the kind of person that we are talking about right now. And throughout the thread that was weaved through this fabric of what has happened here in this last hour was the fact that Officer Lyday gave his life defending not only his community, but going in, he was on a domestic violence call. And a difficult moment because, you know, a family is hurting. And he's going in to try to solve a problem there. And his family talked about how he loved the idea of being a defender of bullies, so to speak. Let's listen to that. We have a earlier remark.
He's gentle nature, a gentle giant, was and always is the ultimate defender In life, in sports, in anything he did, he led the way.
That was Nate Lyday's mom there talking about just a defender, as you mentioned. He really was. And I love that when she said in 5th grade, he was in charge of a poem and that was called If I Was in Charge of the World. And one of the things is to get rid of bullies. And it shows right off that he was a defender of truth. If you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and bring in Jenny Brotherson. Jenny Brotherson is very close to this, obviously, because her own son, Cody Brotherson, lost his life, shot and killed, or actually he was tragically killed as a West Valley City officer in November of 2016 when he was hit by a stolen vehicle. Jenny, you've had a chance to watch this service. Share with us your feelings, your thoughts, your reaction as you've seen this and all unfold here.
Well, of course, it's an incredibly emotional moment as you're watching another family as they are saying goodbye to their hero. But I want to say I was really, really impressed. I loved his mom's speech. I actually loved them all. I like that they gave the opportunity not just to see the police officer, but also who they are as human beings and the families that, pray every time they go out the door that they're going to come home. I loved his mom's, when she talked about the poem he wrote, it made me laugh. It's always nice to hear, these officers have these other sides where they're funny and they love their parents, their brothers, their spouses, their children. And it was I thought it was a very well done. And again, like I said, I can't even hear bagpipes anymore without becoming incredibly emotional. But the entire thing just takes you back to when Cody was killed.
Your own son, I understand, is now your other son is a West Valley City officer. Only a year and a half, you just say, or so, and he's there at the funeral. Your thoughts about that?
I admire that Braden made the decision to also become a police officer. This is the first officer funeral that he's attended since Cody was killed. So it'll be interesting to hear from him when he gets back from it, his feelings as he was there. But I'm also incredibly proud of him for making this decision and being able to go and support his fellow officers today as they say goodbye to one of their own.
Governor Gary Herbert talked a lot about how these families deserve our love and support, and that love and support will help carry them through this incredibly difficult time. Can you explain to those of us who are watching and have watched this service this past hour, kind of the support that you received, not only from other officers within law enforcement, but just the community at large?
Yeah, Cody, kind of similar to Officer Lyday, Cody had grown up in West Valley City. He was serving the community he grew up in. And I was talking to my husband, Jeff, when this all went down with Officer Lyday, and we talked about how as we were headed from the Maverick Center to where we were going to put Cody to rest, how incredible it was. And I remember it was completely silent as we were riding, but watching all the school children that had lined up with their signs talking about Cody being a hero and how much they loved police officers. And I remember that in the immediate days following Cody's death, we would be places and people would come up and tell us thank you for our son's service. And even after the funeral, we had so many people within our neighborhood and our community that would always make sure that they reminded us that they'll never forget who Cody is. And even in the last few days, we've had those people reach out again and say, we want you to know we remember Cody and we remember his sacrifice. But I do very clearly remember the line of people lined up as we were moving from the Maverick Center to Cody's grave. And it was so incredible in this heartbreaking, horrible situation to see all these people being there for Cody.
And last of all, Jenny, what would you tell the family? I mean, it's just incredible to see that that they do notice, obviously, the love and the support and the people that have come out. What would you say to the family during these very challenging and difficult times?
I've been asked that question before, and it's so hard to answer because the heartbreak never goes away, but also the feeling of pride given what your child decided to do with their life. And I would just want to tell them that, there's a huge group of people out there that love them and support them and will be there to help them, and will also never forget the sacrifice that their son made.
Okay. That's Jenny Brotherson joining us here. Her own son, Cody Brotherson, gave his life in the line of duty back in November of 2016. Thank you so much, Jenny. We really appreciate your insight and your thoughts at this challenging time. It must have been a very difficult thing to watch. It brings back a lot of memories. Thank you again.
And as we look live here from Chopper 5, we're going to watch as that procession makes its way to Wasatch Memorial Gardens. But want to remind you, of course, we are talking about Officer Nate Lyday, also Officer Cody Brotherson, who was killed in the line of duty. There have been 147 officers in this state who have been killed doing their job. And there's how many of us can say that when we go to work, there's a possibility that we could be killed doing what we're doing. And there's a gratitude that we have and should have for the men and women, whether it's, of course, in the military, who are often revered, but as well as the people in law enforcement, too.
No question about it. Cody, or Nate, right now makes the 10th Ogden police officer to give his life in the line of duty right here in Utah. We do have a map to kind of show you a little bit of the procession route as to where they'll be going. They will leave Lindquist Field and head north to 25th Street, where they will head east up to Harrison Boulevard. They will then travel north on Harrison to Combie Road and then to the cemetery. What's a little unusual in this particular incident, Laura, you and I obviously have been in this business a very long time in regards to covered a lot of these funerals, unfortunately, over the years. Some of the processions last a very long time. They're a very far distance away. This one, according to Google Maps, is only about 6.4 miles away. So it's not expected to take a very long time, but you're talking about hundreds of officers that come from all over the place to be able to pay tribute. And so it takes a little while, obviously, to get that procession going. And we also have people lining the streets, hopefully from the Lindquist Field all the way down to the Memorial Cemetery. And but it's just always a beautiful sight. It was kind of interesting to see Jenny talk a little bit about how much she noticed that. People coming out with the flags, lining the streets, and that just gave her the support, the love that she needed at that very challenging time.
I'm not going to lie to you. When I woke up this morning, I was worried because it was about 6:30 and the wind was really blowing, and then it began to rain, and I was worried about what it would look like this afternoon. But as you can see, the wind has calmed down. It's not raining. And so that allows people the opportunity to come out, because this is when that family will need the community the most. Everyday people who don't have a connection to Officer Lyday, but live in Ogden and the surrounding areas, to come out and show their support and say, hey, we are here with you. We stand beside you. And that means so much, as you just heard from Cody Brotherson's mother, so much to these families.
And if you're just joining us right now, it is 12:17. You're looking live right now at Chopper 5, a bird's eye view of Lindquist Field, where a beautiful service just took place for fallen officer Nate Lyday. A hometown hero, he's being called, a man born and raised in Ogden, loved his job, loved his family, loved his wife. Today is their 5th year wedding anniversary. Just a very tragic time for this family to have to deal with something like this. It was only about a week and a half ago that he was shot and killed. Really didn't have a chance at all, showing up at a door, domestic violence situation, and shot through the door. And, he was known to go out and help, to rescue, to defend. And what I really love from his mom and some of his family is they talked about a gentle giant. Apparently he was 6'4", but yet he was just a gentle giant, and he was known to be able to de-escalate situations. Unfortunately, he never got really a chance to be able to meet this family, try to de-escalate the situation. But here he is, a fallen officer, the 10th officer to fall here in Ogden Police.
We're going to show you just a little bit of what took place earlier if you are just joining us. This is Nancy Lyday, Officer Lyday's mother, talking about her son.
No greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. And I would say his community, his family. I would ask everyone to consider, in a world full of hate, be the light. Nathan is honored by all of this outpouring of love and support. I hope can each spread love and light, tolerance and kindness. Together we can drive out evil, all forms. Honor Nate, honor all of us, officers, firemen, your fellow man. In a world full of hate, be the light like Nathan did. I love you, son.
So difficult to hear a mother saying goodbye to her 24-year-old son, so very young. 1 year, as you just mentioned, he was sworn in 1 year to the day when he was shot and killed doing his job.
All right, again, a live look from Chopper 5 there of Lindquist Field. We have Brittany Tate that's been there during the funeral services. And Brittany, kind of share with us where you're at and just your reaction, your thoughts on this very difficult day.
Absolutely. Hello, Lori. Hi, Dan. Well, numerous people now flooding out of the field here. What a somber moment this is. As they're walking out, they're walking past Nate Lyday's car, which has been memorialized. The talks were not only completely respectful, but very inspirational as well. Many people in the audience, as I was looking, had tears in their eyes. You could tell that they were notably touched. And as mentioned, you were just listening to some sound from Nancy Lyday, Nate's mother. She mentioned that he had a great sense of humor. She mentioned some very admirable stories about him, how not only was he a Weber State graduate, but he loved being an uncle. And the one thing that I really took away from this was that she said the one way that we can honor Nate is by sharing goodness. That was one way that she said that he constantly was emulating goodness. One of the reasons why he wanted to become a police officer in the first place, because he didn't like bullies, she said. He wanted to be the goodness in the world, the one person who could calm the storm, if you will. I think that it's really evident that his family was incredibly important to him. Also, Andrew Lyday, his father, spoke after his mother. Let's go to some sound from him.
Embodies what I truly love about our city, Ogden. We have a community here that is about love and inclusion, and Nate was a part of that. If there was ever a time that we should come together as a community, this is it. I just wish that my brother could be here to see more of it.
Okay, that was Cody Lyday. That's Nate's big brother by 4 years. He also talked about how Nate loved to have fun. He loved to be a, quote, goofball, is what he said. And he said that it was evident now more than ever that Nate was the tie that binds their family. I thought it was an interesting correlation when he said, now I see that my brother is the tie that binds the city of Ogden. He loved Ogden City. He's a force. He's a glue. And then Cody asked the audience and those in law enforcement, those patrons, those there to pay respects, everyone in attendance, he asked them to unite. He talked about the tumultuous times that are upon us, the discord, and asked people to listen and actually hug those around you, offer more love than discord, more kindness than dislike. And he talked about how he absolutely loved being a brother to Nate. And somebody else who spoke was Nate's partner, actually, Dylan Asherman. He says that they served countless hours together. This is the person that Nate talked with his hopes, his dreams, all of their aspirations when they were serving on shift together. Officer Dylan also echoed that Nate absolutely loved his wife, Ashley. He never had anything negative to say about her. They had been married only 5 years. And he also commented that Nate was always talking about Ashley's cooking and how it was so delicious, so amazing. You can see here, there are these motor cops, these officers who are gathering, paving a way, paying their respects as this procession is about to begin. Dan and Lori, there's a really somber feeling here, but also a very, very strong feeling of respect. Those who are here came out because they feel that unity. I feel like they really feel that desire to unite.
Brittany, as we are watching a live look here of just outside as we're waiting for this procession to get going, I'm curious, the governor talked about law enforcement coming in from out of state to attend these funeral services. As you're watching some of the officers milling about there, have you noticed, we know it as is standard that many other officers come from different departments around the state of Utah, but there are many that come from out of state as well.
Certainly. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Lori. In fact, as I was driving in today into Ogden, I was very humbled to see a number of vehicles, motor vehicles from different law enforcements, not just from around the state. And we're talking even as far as southern Utah, but also, as you mentioned, out of state. Absolutely. They were apparent as they flooded into Ogden. And now, as we see them coming out of the stadium, we can see that there are most definitely all of those different entities and law enforcement entities from not only around the state, but also around the country here represented. Let's go to some sound about that.
I'd also like to express our deep gratitude to the many organizations and volunteers that have made this possible, that have given hundreds and thousands of hours throughout this last week in our support, for all who have brought comfort to us as this police department and as the family has grieved.
And it's starting now here. You can hear those engines revving. You can see the lights behind me as this motor brigade is about to begin. This procession, one that will remember Officer Nate Lyday. So many people gathered here. It's actually quite overwhelming to see all of the different officers on these motorbikes. It's absolutely beautiful and impressive to see that they're here, they've gathered to give this final and very respectful goodbye.
As you can imagine, this is going to be the longest ride in their entire lives for the family of Nate Lyday as they go from here to Wasatch Memorial Gardens. And as we can imagine, the members of Ogden community and beyond will be standing along this procession route and trying to buoy the spirits of this family who is grieving and will continue to grieve the loss of their hero.
Yeah, you know, no matter how many times you cover these kind of stories, this procession always just tugs at your heart. You see the number of officers, you see the support, the love, the energy there in regards to just wanting to do all they can to make this a very special event. We see the fire truck there, the Ogden City fire truck, and on that fire truck is a casket of Officer Nate Lyday. Brittany Tate there on the ground for us right out in front as this begins to start the procession, making its way to the Lindquist Memorial Gardens of the Wasatch. It's only about 6.5 miles away, so it's not expected to last very long. But I know there's a number of people that are lining the streets, dozens or hundreds of people that are lining the streets right now there along the procession route to be able to show their love and support, to be able to be out there for the family. again, a live shot here at Chopper 5.
And I think we really need to tip our hat to the members of the law enforcement community who have stood watch over Officer Lyday's remains, over his casket this entire time. To imagine, I mean, we're talking 24 hours a day watching over until he can be laid to rest. And that's pretty incredible to think about, considering his death on Thursday, May 28th.
Yeah, that is a long time. I mean, we're talking about a week and a half ago or so when he was shot and killed. And they do. That's part of the responsibility. That's part of the service that they give. And it's a 24/7 watch. And that is incredible to see that taking place.
And these are by volunteers. These are people who aren't getting paid. Yeah. They are volunteering their time to support their brothers in blue.
Yeah, and it's one thing when it's in the middle of the day, but when it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and you're standing there watching and nobody's around, that is a dedication. That is service. We also have seen Officer Lyday's vehicle that's out in front of the Lindquist Field, which has been a real symbol of who this man was. They have decorated it, and it's been out in front of the Ogden Police Station, and they did kind of a memorial with it a couple days ago. Just a really neat event. But there they go. The procession looks to be underway. Brittany, can you still hear us there? Your thoughts and what are you seeing?
Absolutely, I can. Everybody has their phones up, they're recording this. It's a memory that people don't want to forget. I feel the feeling here that they don't want to forget this because they feel like they want to give back. They want to do better. They want to do fallen Officer Nate Lyday's sacrifice justice. They want to make sure to honor him. As you can see, that casket covered with the American flag. A beautiful and respectful feeling here.
And there it is now.
Now people are starting to walk. People starting to walk, starting to follow the procession, starting to take part. Hundreds of people flooding out of Lindquist Stadium, where it's estimated that anywhere from 2,500 to 2,800 people attended. Many of those, as we mentioned, law enforcement officials.
We've been talking a little about where the procession is going, and it is going to be heading south right now on Lincoln Avenue, and then it turns left at 25th Street to Harrison Boulevard, makes a right or goes southbound on Harrison Boulevard, and then turns left on 5600 South, and then that's when it goes right into Comey Road and into the cemetery service. Again, it's not expected to be a long procession as far as the length of time. Apparently, I'm being told that we have Jenny Taylor on the phone. She was at the funeral. Her husband, she lost her husband in the line of duty there, who was overseas at the time. Jenny, thank you for joining us, and your thoughts, your feelings as you watch this unfold. Just a very touching service today.
Thank you. To hear stories of Nate as a little boy, to hear of him as a professional police officer, to hear of him as a brother and a friend, it's just so heartwarming to be able to learn a little more about him and the life he lived. It sounds like he just lived a life full of service, full of sacrifice, so happy in his profession, always so willing to help and be a peacemaker. It's just, I walk away so inspired by him, by his family, and by the service that he's rendered.
You know, Jenny, I was listening to Governor Gary Herbert, and I was inspired by his call for all of us to reflect and he said this, and he said there should be a desire to serve and give our lives in the service of others. And it was really a call to action to collectively, as a community, be better.
Yeah, isn't that great? I love that he quoted from the Gettysburg Address. I think we all know how that address starts 7 years ago. We all know how it ends, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Very few of us know that in the middle, Abraham Lincoln gave a call of action. It's for those of us, those of the living, to honor the dead in the way we live, to give our lives in service, to give our lives in sacrifice, to not just stand back and say, wow, Officer Lyday is so amazing, but to say, wow, he's so amazing, I want to do my part too. I want to step up, I want to reflect, I want to lift those around me. And it's just like General Patton said, though we mourn that these great men are gone, how blessed we are that these great men live, and how much do we have to learn from them and really kind of up our game. I mean, like you said, you walk away inspired saying, in the midst of this heartbreak and tragedy, I want to go home and be a better person. I want to be a better neighbor. I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better mother to my children and lift up my community. And I'm just so touched by everything that was said today. The way the community has come together, the flags, the ribbons, the police wives have worked so hard, to sit so close for that entire police family community. And it truly has been a beautiful, though tragic thing, but beautiful to say, this is my home. This is our home, and we're going to get through this together. And we're going to stand by Ashley and by Nancy and by Andrew and by the rest of the police force. And not just today, not just once the burial's over, but in the days and weeks ahead, because as you know, that's when it feels heavier. That's when it gets even harder. But how great to be so inspired by this great man and the life that he's lived.
Jenny, we saw in the video, some amazing video of that huge American flag there on the field. It's part of Follow the Flag, and it hangs in honor of your own husband. Your thoughts, your feelings as you had a chance to know that was the flag that represents your husband and his sacrifice.
Well, and I'm going to correct you right there. That flag represents so many and their sacrifice. So many that call that flag Big Betsy. There's another one just like it called the Major. And this is the flag that hung in the canyon right after my husband died. And this really is the flag that has been flying in Pleasant Grove for years. And it's a chance for members of the community to come out with groups like Follow the Flag and Fallen Hero Network and so many others and say we want to do something. We want to show our love, our support, our gratitude. And to see that flag, it's nothing short of a weather miracle. So I don't know what Grant Wayman was working on this morning, but when we were here setting up flags at 7 and 8 a.m., it seems pretty iffy to have that flag fly. It acts as a giant sail in this wind. But everything calmed down just long enough for the beautiful service to take place. The wind calmed. We were able to see that flag. I hope this family, Nate's family, and the police department family knows every stripe in that flag is the service that they continually give. And as was mentioned in the funeral, every day, some of these police officers put on their uniform and goes to work, willing to give their own lives in our protection and in our service. And that's what that flag represents. I believe that's what America represents. If you think of the American dream, it's wanting to lift above where you are, lift those around you above where they are. And that's exactly what I want in Oxford every single day.
Jenny Taylor, as you're talking to us this afternoon, we are watching children who are lining the streets with American flags, waving those flags, people that we can only assume have probably never met Officer Nate Lyday, but yet they are here to honor him, his sacrifice, and his family and friends who are, we can only imagine, going through an incredibly difficult time right now, but also offering support to fellow law enforcement officers, men and women who do a difficult and dangerous job every day.
Yeah, Jenny, I would assume that love and support you saw yourself as during that procession. What's the family feeling? What are they going through as they're heading to the cemetery at this time?
Oh, so many emotions. I remember being in that processional. I remember thinking, how did I get vehicle number 2 to be right behind that hearse? But I hope Ashley and Nancy and Andrew and the others and the Lyday family know that every flag being flown, every blue ribbon being tied is an expression of love. To be inside that procession feels, you're mostly numb. You're in a daze. You feel like you're watching a beautiful, beautiful Hallmark movie about patriotism in small-town America. And then every once in a while it slaps you in the face that you are the starring role of that beautiful patriotic Hallmark movie. But gratitude, I think what all of us in the community are trying to do is express gratitude. I know the family feels gratitude for the way they've been supported. Sometimes we say, hey, I'll pray for you, or I'm thinking of you, and that sounds trite, or we feel like we want to do more. But please don't negate the importance of praying for and thinking of this great family right now. I can't tell you how many times I have been physically sustained by the thoughts and prayers in my behalf and in behalf of my family. And so if you're out there listening and think, I wish I could do something, I wish I could solve all of this, I think human nature wants to fix it. Unfortunately, there's nothing any of us can do to fix this for the Lyday family, but we can be there for them to help them face it. And that's what our love, our prayers, our blue light bulbs, our flags, our ribbons, maybe a casserole for dinner. All of those are expressions of love and gratitude. And again, just such a beautiful sense of community here that we have.
Jenny, I agree with you. I think that anytime people says that I'm praying for your family, you take those prayers and you're thankful for them. I know in my situation, I was always so very thankful when people would say that they're praying for my family. Mr. Rogers used to call them the helpers. I call them the doers, and those are the people who don't ask but show up on your front door with those casseroles or with gift cards or with opportunities of service, whether that's cleaning your yard or doing anything that they can to help. And that is what this family is going to need, not tomorrow, not next week, but 6 months from now, a year from now. Are you still getting benefiting from those types of people? Like I said, I call them the doers. The people just show up and they do.
Oh yeah, every day, Lori. You're so right. And in your situation, you know, and in mine, and so many other people have been through something so hard where people ask you, how can I help? Or let me know if you need anything. And you know what the answer is? I have no idea. I don't know what help I need. Sometimes the emotion, the grief, everything is so overwhelming. It's not that I'm lying when I say, I don't know how to answer that question. And so to be the doer, like you said, is so beautiful. To show up, I think sometimes we're really worried about doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing, and we don't want to offend, and we don't want to keep ripping the scab off of the wound. And so unfortunately, because of that worry, sometimes we just do nothing. And really, I think what we need to do is just do something. Like you said, you show up, maybe it's a casserole. Maybe it's the third time this week we've eaten lasagna. But you know what? When you brought that lasagna over, it wasn't the meat and the pasta that I tasted. It was the love and the support. And like a gift card, something for the family to do to get their mind off of it, to be, you know, maybe you can go to a movie, or maybe you can go enjoy a bite to eat somewhere where you don't have to deal with being in the home, or some things like that you mentioned. A lovely blanket, a memento, a memory. I think the biggest thing, if anybody has memories of Nate, share those with his family, whether it's on Facebook or through an email or a note that you leave on the door. That family is going to want your memories of their fallen son, of their fallen husband, of their fallen brother and friend. And again, you got to be a doer, and that means you got to not worry about doing the perfect thing, because you're probably not going to do the perfect thing, and that's okay. And what you do or say might bring some tears from the family, and that's okay too. Don't feel like you ruined everything if they get emotional when you try to help. Those emotions are healthy, they're very normal, and they're going to come. Let them come with you by their side, and know that there's going to be highs and lows. You know, there's days when we would just laugh and laugh and laugh at the beautiful memories. And then there's moments when you just feel like you can't breathe because the grief feels brand new. Whether, like you said, it's not just today and tomorrow. What about 6 months from now? What about every single year on May 28th when they relive this in their minds? What about every wedding anniversary on June 6th when Ashley thinks of what could have been and this beautiful future she and her husband had dreamed of, like we all do? Those are the days when a simple text, a note on the door, a cookie from a friend can mean so much and really speak volumes. And that's what I think Utah's made of, just that kind of heart, that kind of compassion. And I think just that kind of willingness to say, I can't fix this. Please let me help you face it.
Jenny Taylor joining us live right now, giving us some very insightful perspective. She lost her own husband in the line of duty. He was killed in Afghanistan back in November of 2018. Thank you so much, Jenny. And we appreciate your thoughts and your feelings, and we wish you and your family the very best. Let's go ahead and you're looking again live at Chopper 5 here along Harrison Boulevard is where the procession is at now. Let's take Alex Cabrero. He's live along the procession route. And Alex, where are you at, and kind of share with us your thoughts at this time?
Dan, we're on along Harrison Boulevard here at about 32nd Street, right in front of Mount Ogden Junior High School. We've been here for a couple of hours, and I got to tell you, Dan and Lori, in the last 30 minutes or so, people are starting to line the streets here. You can see just a few of them over here. I mean, I'm counting, there's got to be hundreds of people here lining the streets just to show their respect as this procession goes by. We'll chat with one lady here who came out. She lives here in Ogden, and just wants to ask you, I know it's a dumb question, but why come out here? It's showing the respect, isn't it?
Yeah, Yes, to show respect for a family and for the community that we love so much.
And now in Ogden, how proud are you of Ogden? Because the people here have really turned out over the past week to support Lyday.
Yeah, I love Ogden. I was born and raised here, and I don't plan on leaving. And I love the community support and everything, not just this, but with everything else. But this has been a really neat thing for the community, especially at this time.
Did you know Nate?
I didn't. I went to the same high school as him, but I was a little bit older than him. But I know a lot of people that did, and I've only heard great things about him.
And that's what we've been hearing. And even though maybe most people maybe didn't know him, it doesn't matter. Coming out here to show that support is what's important.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you. And that's a lot of what we're hearing, Dan and Lori. People maybe didn't know Nate Lyday, but they wanted to come out here and show their support because they do feel this is important. Now, you see a lot of these American flags here planted alongside of the road that people have put up. Just a little while ago, I did interview the man who kind of put those together. We'll grab him here real quick. And this is Brady Ketchum. And Brady, okay, I know they're getting close, Brady, but you put up all these flags.
I did.
Why? I know. Why? You felt you wanted to do this.
I wanted to do it. To be honest with you, we were on our way to the hardware store and drove by and there was nothing out yet. And I had a feeling that we needed to turn around and make this happen. And we need to honor Officer Lyday and it's just a small part to thank him for his service. And it makes you feel good when you can do this for someone else.
And you're from Ogden yourself. The support in Ogden has been pretty good.
It's amazing. Ogden is a wonderful town. There's a lot of support and there's a lot of closeness and a lot of us are friends and it's just a great place. Great place. So
thanks for your time, Brady. Appreciate you, man. Yep. And Brady, I mean, if you take a look down at all the flags, it was he and his family and friends that really started putting these flags in just about an hour or so ago. They wanted to have some kind of a show here of support so that when the procession makes its way through this area, that the family, that the fellow officers, that they will see the support. As Dan and Laura, I mean, it is tough being a law enforcement officer right now. There is no doubt about that. And I've heard from some law enforcement officers, they wonder if anybody still supports them. There is no doubt that this is a show of support. Now, I do see the procession coming down here now, heading our way. Again, we're at Harrison Boulevard at 32nd Street, right in front of Mount Ogden Junior High School. And this is the beginning of the procession here, coming through this area. Dan and Lori, just a show of lights, of colors, and of respect and support for Ogden Police Officer Nathan Lyday. And a lot of people out here showing that respect and support. Quite a show. Dan and Lori?
Alex, I can only imagine as we're watching this procession, people have their hands over their hearts. They're standing solemnly. This is an opportunity for those who brought their children to explain to them, what's happening and that this man gave his life in the service of his community, one that his brother Cody called Ogden is about love and inclusion, and I think that's what you're witnessing right now.
Yes, we do see a lot of people with their hands over their hearts, and we also do see a lot of children. A lot of parents have brought their children out here. In fact, the gentleman I just interviewed, Brady Ketchum, he brought his two daughters out here. He said, after soccer practice, we have something important to do, and he brought them out here because he wanted them to see this and wanted them to experience this. Brady kept saying he loves America, he loves Ogden. And Nate Lyday was from Ogden as well. And so he wanted his children to experience what he says is something that should be experienced and respected. There goes Officer Lyday's casket right there, draped in an American flag on the back of that Ogden fire truck. And people showing their respect, hands over their hearts, a lot of them. If you see a couple of people saluting, waving flags, and just having that respect for one last ride through his hometown for Officer Nate Lyday. Dan and Lori.
Alex, I know that you've been covering this now for several days. You've been there. You've had a chance to interview officers, get reaction, even many people in the community there. It was really impressive to be able to see his vehicle sitting outside the Ogden police station, and it was just flooded with cards and flowers and all kinds of just wonderful things of support. What kind of things did you experience as you had a chance to cover this story over the last few days? And what kind of things did you have a chance to see?
Yeah, Dan, you're right about the police car there in front of the Ogden Police Headquarters. Just a huge show of support from the public. A lot of people from Ogden, they love Ogden, and they love their police officers out here, and they wanted to show that support. And something I saw, it was last Friday at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, we were getting ready for a live shot. We were doing a story when the procession happened to bring Officer Lyday's body back from the medical examiner's office in Taylorsville back here to the funeral in Ogden. There was a procession going on for that. We were out here covering that story. We were getting ready to do a live shot at 10 o'clock in the police department, and all of a sudden we saw a whole bunch of tow trucks just start around the block where the Ogden Police Department is. I mean, there were dozens of tow trucks. I was able to pull one of them over real quick and ask, hey, what is going on here? And he says, you know what? A lot of us tow truck drivers deal with these police officers all the time after accidents, after cars are stuck on the side of the road or something. And they say they did deal with Officer Lyday several times and that he was one of the good ones. So you saw this parade of tow trucks going around the Ogden Police Department. And in fact, just a little while ago, there was a tow truck driver who pulled up next to us here at Mount Ogden Junior High School wearing a big KSL truck, a guy named Jim, and he says that the tow trucks, that they're going to do that again along the procession route a little further south here. So I think we'll see that from Chopper 5. You'll see dozens of tow trucks with their lights flashing just in a show of support for Officer Lyday. Now, I'm covered quite a few enforcement officers. I don't recall seeing all of these tow truck drivers doing something like this, Dan and Lori. So definitely that support for him is far beyond just ordinary citizens.
Alex, I'm so glad you shared that story. That really gives us an additional look, more depth to what we've heard during the funeral services for Officer Nate Lyday. We'll look for those tow trucks as we're watching here a live look from Chopper 5 as the casket of Officer Nate Lyday makes its way to Wasatch Memorial Gardens, where he will be laid to rest. Let's go back to Brittany Tate, who is live for us. As we're watching this procession, your thoughts here as people still milling about this afternoon, Brittany?
Absolutely. Well, I'm here standing in front of this car that has been memorialized, Officer Nate Lyday's car that Alex was talking about. One of the major thoughts that's crossing through my mind right now is the fact that this is such a teaching moment. We've touched on the fact that there are many families out here. I actually spoke to a family earlier today, too, asking them, did you know Nathan? And they said, no, we didn't. But it's important for us to be here. It's important for my children to understand that sacrifice is of God and sacrifice is of love. And then I talked to the little boy after, and he said, I love soccer too, just like Nathan did, proving that there's always something that can be taken away, regardless of how young or old you might be. And Lori, I really appreciated your perspective as well as Jenny, because you can really throw empathy to this. Many of us are here and we feel it in our hearts, but having that empathy to try and understand what this family is going for, what this ultimate sacrifice is, I think it's really important to realize that we have a diligence, as Governor Herbert said, to really give back. And I really was touched by what Nate Lyday's mother said. She talked about how the one way we can honor Nate is by being the goodness, sharing tolerance and love. That is what he stood for.
His smile, his demeanor, his silly sense of humor was always infectious. All he had to do was walk into a room. There seemed to be a special nature and spirit that followed him.
She was clearly very emotional at the end of that talk. I can't even imagine being a mother having to say goodbye to your son. He was so young, only 15 months on the force, but she said he loved being a police officer. It's what he wanted to do. He loved being the good in the world. I appreciate what Governor Herbert said. He actually quoted scripture. He said that when he talked of Job, he said, in the book of Job, if a man die, will he live again? And then he said, let Nate's example live in us. Let us be better. What a great takeaway here as we're seeing so many people who came out today, hands over hearts, flags everywhere, flying in the wind. That is actually just a perfect day to really showcase the patriotism here, the sacrifice. all of the beauty that surrounds what is very much a very beautiful yet tragic scenario. The thing that we can do again, and the takeaway, is to try and give back, do our due diligence to remember those who are suffering, and also remember the sacrifice to remember those who give ultimately.
And also to remember, as we heard during these funeral services and got to know Officer Nate Lyday just a little bit, but to make sure and understand that the cops are the good guys. Nate was a good guy, and that he didn't meet an enemy, only a friend. He was a friend to everyone, and that's what his mother said, his father said, his brother said, that he was a gentle giant, their words. And so, as we learn from this, and it's an opportunity to learn, as Governor Gary Herbert called it, a call for action, that when we meet others, whether it's in law enforcement or in our private lives, that we assume the best. We assume the best.
And that's what's so neat, I think, about and humbling about what we've been able to witness here today. In contrast of what's going on across the world right now, and the hate, the anger, the frustration, the feelings that are boiling over, yet we were able to still feel this is a man who really took his job and loved his job and was honorable in all that he did. Let's go back to Alex Cabrero there, who is again standing live along the procession route. And Alex, I believe the procession is past you now, but just a lot of tender feelings to be able to watch this unfold right there. A hometown hero, as he's being called.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Dan. The procession is still going on past us now, but the Ogden Police Department did go past. But one of the things you see often with something like this, Dan, is just the support from other law enforcement agencies. I mean, here comes the Roy Police Department. We saw somebody from Meridian, Idaho that just went by. This is that law enforcement brotherhood, that thin blue line that we often hear about, and they do support and love each other no matter what the call. But it's when something like this, when that brotherhood certainly comes out. Here comes a Salt Lake City Police Patrol car going by now. So they come from all over the state and even beyond Utah just to be a part of something like this. Now, here's some people over here that have that thin blue line flag as well as American flag. And I know, Bailey, we're going to bring you in and chat with you real quick over here. Bailey, you live in Ogden. This is home for you. It's been quite a week here in Ogden, hasn't it?
It really has.
What does bring you out to show the support? Why did you feel it in your heart to really come out here?
Well, my brother-in-law is an Ogden police officer, so seeing the community come together and really bond, especially during this week of just craziness, it's really touching and brought peace, because I feel like my brother-in-law is being protected in a way from our community.
That show of support, sometimes we see these officers and they can be so macho, like nothing bothers them. But when they see this, they see this and they feel that.
For sure. I know my brother-in-law has really felt the support, and people have come and put nice gestures on his door, like a blue ribbon and stuff. So it's been awesome to see the community come together.
Now, being from Ogden yourself, what has that support been like here? Now, you have to be proud of your fellow city residents here, just that they're out like this all over the place.
Oh yeah, definitely proud to be from Ogden. It's a good place. And I was in a different part of the country for a few years. I'd always be like, I'm from Ogden, Utah. I wouldn't say like Salt Lake or something. I always say Ogden, because I'm proud to be from Ogden.
Today, a proud day as well for so many people to come out. Bailey, thank you for your time. Sorry to hold you up. And also, there was one woman I spoke to here. Her name is Shauna. And Shauna, you came out here too to show your support. I know this is a dumb question, but why? Why in your heart did you want to come out?
Mostly because I wanted to support our fallen police officers. I served in the military for 20 years, and I know how important it is for police officers that they're out there protecting us on a local level. And this police officer that happened to get killed, I have a nephew that works right alongside of him, and I just felt I needed to be out here.
And that show of support, it's you have to be proud of it, especially when you see these little kids flags.
Wonderful. I think it's wonderful. We need more of that. in our country.
Shawna, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate that. And I think from Chopper 5 here now, you're seeing those tow trucks that we were talking about just a few minutes ago. Now, the idea behind all these tow trucks, again, we saw that last week outside the Ogden Police Department, simply that these tow truck drivers, they deal with crashes a lot. They deal with some pretty tough things. And it's not just a car pulled over on the side of the road sometimes that they have to tow. Sometimes they are involved in some, pretty horrific tragedies with some serious accidents, and they deal with the police department as well. That's why these tow truck drivers wanted to come out in support of Officer Nate Lyday. They say they've dealt with him on the police side when there's something horrific that happened, and they told me that Officer Lyday was one of the good ones. Compassionate with victims, compassionate with families, always making sure that the road was safe for the tow truck drivers to operate, to do what they needed to do before clearing a scene. So that show of support from the tow truck drivers, you don't see that all the time with these types of events, but at least here in Ogden for Officer Lyday, these tow truck drivers certainly wanted to show their support this afternoon.
Alex, I know that you don't have our vantage point here from Chopper 5, but we're watching these drivers. They have their hands over their heart. There are multiple tow trucks. I didn't count them, but there were at least 20, at least. Probably many more than that. So it wasn't just a few. We were talking a show of support from these groups of people.
Yeah, and that's something we saw last. And you're right. It wasn't just a couple of tow trucks. Talking dozens of tow trucks. They were their horns. We saw the same thing where they were just having their hands over their hearts in order to show that support. And it's great seeing that support, Lori, simply because, we seem to be so divided right now in our country. So divided that, it's awful what happened here with Officer Lyday, but taking a pause from maybe societal concerns for a little bit and just showing support and feeling the emotion and coming together as one, it is refreshing. It is nice to see something like this, Dan and Lori, and those tow truck drivers and everybody here that I've been chatting with along the side of the road. They feel that too. Right now, it doesn't matter if they're Republican. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat. They're here as Americans, as Ogden residents, just showing this support because, man, we need to come together, and this is a moment to come together. Dan and Lori.
And you're right, Alex. A very touching scene as we've been able to watch that fire truck and the casket go right by those tow trucks. It's, as you mentioned, Alex, it's not something you see a lot in these processions. There obviously a variety of different people come out on these kind of things, but what a wonderful gesture. And here's a young man that was only on the force for basically a year, and yet he has this kind of support. That goes to show you the kind of impact he made in a very short amount of time. Again, if you're just joining us, a beautiful service just was held for fallen officer Nate Lyday, and now we're seeing the procession go from Lindquist Field over to Wasatch Memorial Gardens. It's only about a 6.5 mile drive or so, but you could see the fire truck right now cruising along at a very slow speed, giving a chance for those who have come out to pay respect and honor this young man who had been an officer for a very short time, but yet made a huge impact. Today, as we've been mentioning, is his 5th wedding anniversary to his dear wife, Ashley. Just a very tragic situation. He was shot and killed only about a week and a half ago, answering the call of a domestic violence call. And we know from talking to officers that domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls out there sometimes, and they have to be very careful. But as Alex and Brittany have been talking about, we've seen vehicles from all different police agencies all across the state and even outside of the state of Utah. I don't know if Brittany's still there. Morgan, we have Brittany still there? Okay, it looks like she's not there, but she is there. Brittany, maybe you could just share with us, is it procession still coming out of the field there, or is it wrapping up from your end?
So, Dan, it has wrapped up, finally, what seemed like an endless amount of cars and lights have finally come to a stop here. But what an amazing scene it was. There are still people hanging around, people who are taking in the sights of this car, people who are paying their respects, and again, a very touching feeling. It was such a beautiful memorial service to talk about Nate. This is the person who his mother said hated broccoli, didn't like bullies, was such a good friend, never said a bad thing about another person, and his partner on the force attributes Nate to saving his own life, the person who was next to him the day that he was taken. So many beautiful things that were said about this young man who truly left a legacy.
And as we're looking live here, an exclusive look from Chopper 5 as this fire truck carrying Officer Nate Lyday's casket moving toward Wasatch Memorial Gardens. I just want to point out, too, Brittany was standing in front of his patrol car, and earlier in the week, that car was inundated with teddy bears and flags and messages. We don't see those, and I think that is a reminder to the family. Hopefully, all of those messages that have been left behind have been passed on to his family. They're going to need that in the coming days. They're going to need that to hold on to him, and to feel that love from the community will buoy them. It will carry them. Grief is extremely difficult, and I liken it to a wave. It goes up and down, up and down. In those down times, in those dark times, those messages will be their light.
And we heard that from two family members who lost loved ones in the line of duty. We see the procession now taking a turn into Wasatch Memorial Gardens. This is where he'll be laid to rest. Obviously, with these kind of officer funerals, it's a very tender and a very special moment as they lay the officer to rest, where they have different types of things that are done as far as, I guess there's going to be a flyover, I understand. Also the 21 gun salute, the bugle being playing, and those kind of things. And so it's expected to be a very special event. Again, weather apparently is picking up just a little bit there, but we've been a little surprised. We've all kind of been on edge all day whether or not weather's going to be okay for this funeral to take place outside, in an outside venue, a stadium. But apparently it's been a little windy, but other than that, it's been a very beautiful and wonderful service. You see the American flag draped over as this huge American flag as they come right into the cemetery at this time.
And you're seeing, of course, going through the fire trucks there. And as law enforcement and firefighters work together, we don't see a police officer's funeral without firefighters present. And you see an example of that here as they're going underneath the ladder truck flag display. And that's usually reserved for officers who have been killed in the line of duty. It's two ladders with the American flag in between. We often see that as they're paying their respects to Officer Nate Lyday. Alex, let's go back to you. I know you're about halfway through this procession. Are you still seeing cars forming up the back of the line here?
Oh, yeah, Lori. I mean, I think we're seeing the end of the cars right here coming through here at 32nd Street here on Harrison Boulevard in front of Mount Ogden Junior High School. But, Lori, there was someone else I was just chatting with over here. Her name is Sky. And, Sky, I noticed you have a T-shirt for Nate Lyday. You have your children here waving the American flags. And at some point, you were starting to choke up a little bit. I think I saw you almost...
Oh, I was crying for sure. This is really emotional. You know, it's sad that we even have, that this is even happening. To one of our own. It's unfortunate.
The support that we've seen here in Ogden, I know you like law enforcement.
Until the day I die.
And I know lately law enforcement wonder, is there still support out there? There's no doubt here in Ogden there's support.
There's no doubt. In this community that I was born and raised in and still live in, we back the blue, this family backs the blue, and we will never let them stand alone.
The importance of bringing your children out here. I noticed them waving flags earlier and a hand over the heart. What does this mean for the children?
Just setting an example that, there are such good people out there, that they're protecting our community, and teaching my kids to stand for something that they believe in, and backing the blue and backing law enforcement and the military. And it just means everything to me that we can do this for our community.
Sky, thank you for your time. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you. So, Sky, I just noticed her when we were coming down here after chatting with a few of the other people. She was just getting really emotional. Then I noticed she had a T-shirt there that had Nate Lyday's name on it and her children waving flags. You had to talk to her, and you heard her getting emotional there again, Dan and Lori, just that the support out there needs to be known for not only Officer Nate Lyday, not only for the Ogden Police Department, but for all law enforcement and the military. But right here, it looks like traffic is starting to pick up again, Dan and Lori. Looks like the end of the procession has passed by us here on Harrison Boulevard at 32nd Street, and people are starting to get back there into their cars. So Dan and Lori, we'll send it back there to you as we get there into the cemetery.
Alex, just a housekeeping question for you. As we're watching the American flag as the fire truck moves by, it is waving in the wind. How do things look? How does the weather looking right now?
Yeah, you know, the wind did pick up a little bit. I think we were expecting some really bad weather here a little while ago, but it held up. The weather was just fine. We had some cloud cover. It wasn't getting hot whatsoever, but the wind seemed to pick up a little bit here in the last few minutes. But no, people weren't too hot. They weren't too cold. And along the route here, they were just fine to show their support.
All right, Alex Cabrera live for us right now along Harrison Boulevard there where the procession passed by just a short time ago. He said that it pretty much looks like traffic is moving again on Harrison Boulevard where he's at least, but we see a live view from bird's eye view again from Chopper 5 of the cemetery, Wasatch Memorial Gardens, where this has just been an incredible, beautiful service and a great tribute to a young man that gave his life in the service of his community and also his family and others there to save another family that was in distress. And so it's a wonderful service here that we're watching kind of come to an end. You know, in covering these events, Lori, I've always been very touched with one thing that they do, and that's the last radio call that they always do. And that's basically where dispatch kind of gives one last call to his number, kind of, are you there? And then there's silence, and then it's kind of he's no longer here, but he will never be forgotten, kind of a thing. And the message behind that and the feelings behind that is always very tender, because it is just always very silent, complete silence, and then be able to hear them make one last radio call to this officer is always a very touching moment.
And if you joined us and were watching the funeral services for Officer Lyday, his father, Andrew, made that final call for him. That was heartbreaking to watch, and even you could see the emotion bubbling up inside him in that moment when he was making that final call for his son. Something else I want to point out too, because he gave the ultimate compliment to the Ogden Police Department, his father Andrew did, by saying, you know, Chief Watt was one of his police instructors. We're talking about Nate Lyday's father. So his father, Chief Watt, was his police instructor 29 years ago.
That's amazing.
He said when his son went to the police academy and then was hired by Ogden Police Department and knew Chief Watt was going to be his chief, that made him feel comfortable and safe knowing that his son was going into a department that supported its officers. And that was the ultimate compliment that he could pay to the Ogden Police.
It really was, and I was very touched by that too, and I couldn't believe that was the case, because Chief Watt has obviously been there for quite some time, and that's amazing to be able to see that. So here we are at the cemetery right now. That's his mother, Nate's mother, now making her way across as they're beginning to kind of prepare the casket to the cemetery there.
As you look live here as the buses begin to arrive at Wasatch Memorial Gardens and the ceremony will take place, the burial ceremony, we just want to remind you, and I think Governor Gary Herbert did an incredible job of bridging what's happening in our country and reflecting on what you're seeing on your screen, the death of a law enforcement officer simply doing his job. And he didn't mention it directly, but it was a call to action for each and every one of us to think, what can I do? What can I do to be better, to do better for our community and our country? And if we can remember that and reflect on that, I think that it will honor the service and sacrifice of Officer Nate Lyday. And again, we just want to thank you at home for joining us on this tender and uplifting day as we've celebrated and remembered the life and the legacy of Officer Nate Lyday. Just 24 years old, so young. He was killed in the line of duty, just doing his job.
Yeah, a man who loved his wife and family, loved his job and loved his community, given his own life to help save the life of another family. A hometown hero, as we've heard today, and as in the words of his mother, in a world full of hate, be the light like Nathan did.
This will complete our coverage on television of the memorial services for fallen Officer Nate Lyday. You can join us on our KSL TV app and on our KSL Facebook page as we continue to stream live. And we leave you with a look earlier of what took place as we remember the service and sacrifice of Officer Nate Lyday.
Nathan loved Ogden and his job. He served the community of Ogden, and because of that service, he gave the ultimate sacrifice, and now is at peace. Nothing great was ever accomplished without making sacrifices. Let us remember Nathan's sacrifice and do all we can do to keep this community as he would have wanted. Great.
And welcome to the funeral service. For Ogden Police Officer Nate Lyday. Officer Nate Lyday made the ultimate sacrifice and lost his life serving a family, a community, our state, and our God.
His smile, his demeanor, his silly sense of humor was always infectious. All he had to do was walk into a room.
He stood so tall and proud the day he was sworn into the police department. He was eager to learn and improve so he could be the best officer possible.
We always remember the service and sacrifice of this fine young man.
No greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. Would ask everyone to consider, in a world full of hate, be the light. In a world full of hate, be the light like Nathan did. I love you, son.
shot when they start bringing him back down.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we humbly come before you and thank you for giving us Nate Lyday. We thank you for his talent. We thank you for his compassion. We thank you for his kindness. We thank you for his friendship. Lord, we ask that this ground be hallowed to serve as the final resting place of a noble hero. A hero whose time on this earth was spent in the service of others. A hero who laid down his life so that others would not suffer. Lord, we ask you to take Cody, Andrew, Nancy, Ashley, and their loved ones in your care. We ask that the rain wash away their suffering and nourish hope and courage in their strong hearts. Lord, please let the sun fill their souls with the rays of light brought to this earth. Amen.
you can take somebody else, I can reposition for them.
call to Officer Lyday. US 1069 Weaver. US 1069 Weaver. US 1069 Weaver. Officer Lyday, your passion and love for the job was like none other. It was evident as you graced everyone around you with your uplifting smile. You care deeply for the community, and your love for your family and your wife will serve as an example to us all. You served with honor and will always be a true brother in blue. Though you are gone, you will never be forgotten. Rest easy, brother. We have the watch from here. US 1069 is 1042 at 1344. Weaver clear.
I'd like to thank everyone for their love and support today. Thank you.
Welcome to the funeral service. For Ogden Police Officer Nate Lyday. Officer Nate Lyday made the ultimate sacrifice and lost his life serving a family, a community, our state, and our God.
His smile, his demeanor, his silly sense of humor was always infectious. All he had to do was walk into a room.
He stood so tall and proud the day he was sworn into the police department. He was eager to learn and improve so he could be the best officer possible.
Always remember the service and sacrifice of this fine young man.
No greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. Would ask everyone to consider, in a world full of hate, be the light. In a world full of hate, be the light, like Nathan did. I love you, son.